My mentor is Dr. Nathan Palmer, and our research is titled A Smile is Worth 1,000 Words. And we looked at the individual versus structural explanations of visible dental decay among undergraduates in the United States. The purpose of this research was to take a quantitative approach into exploring both what it means to have good or bad teeth in the United States, as well as to question the casual explanations that Americans give or use to explain why some people have poor oral health. In order to do this, you first have to look at oral health as well as oral health inequalities. In 2000, the Surgeon General released a report referring to oral health as a silent epidemic of dental and oral diseases. And while oral health has effects on the population as a whole, there is the presence of inequalities within oral health. And the two main trends that identify themselves are that oral health inequalities are influenced by a culmination of factors rather than just one. So this could include environmental factors such as community water fluoridation, geographical isolation, or behavioral factors, as well as taking into account social, cultural, biological, and many more. Another trend is that oral health inequalities in the United States disproportionately affect many marginalized groups. So this is going to include low-income groups, people with disabilities, and racial and ethnic minorities. Because oral health inequality exists, we then want to look at how people explain or the explanations given for these oral health inequalities. And this can best be done through the use of stratification beliefs, which examine what is believed about social inequality as well as what determines what is believed. And so with stratification beliefs, there is the dominant as well as the non-dominant social group. The dominant social group consists of white, older, and higher income respondents, and they tend to favor an individualistic explanation over structuralist, while the non-dominant social group places more importance on the structuralist explanations of inequality. And similar to how oral health inequalities have a culmination of factors, there are many factors that shape stratification beliefs, and these include race, which is the most prominent and primary shaping factor, as well as gender and ideology. As I stated before, there is a dominant as well as non-dominant group for stratification beliefs, and we can see that most Americans use one of the two prominent ideological frames that fall under it. So with the dominant group, there is the individual frame, where personal attributes are seen as the reason why somebody may be poor or wealthy. And this leads to individual aspects of laziness, poor work ethic, or untalented being reasons why someone is poor. Whereas a structural frame looks at causes outside of an individual's control, such as discrimination and loss that favor the wealthy. And these explanations matter for social inequality because those are then collectively endorsed within the culture and create the framework for how we think about other inequalities, such as oral health inequality. And when we have this, they are embedded within the institutions, and they have the power to reproduce or undermine the importance or legitimacy of the inequality. This brings me to my research questions. So we wanted to look at first, how do people make sense of what it means to have good and bad teeth? And once that had been established, then what is believed about the causes of bad teeth? And how do perceptions of oral health inequality vary by the respondent's social location or political ideology? To do this, we did 2 phases of surveys. In phase 1, we made a qualitative survey that looked to explain what it means to have good or bad teeth, and that was composed of 136 participants. And once we determined that, we used that information from the phase 1 to then create the survey for phase 2, which was a qualitative survey that had questions that measured the individualistic and structuralistic beliefs about the causes of poor oral health outcomes, with 534 participants. The dependent variables for this were the scales of the individual and structural explanations of bad teeth, while the independent variables were sex and conservatism, and the control variables were race and ethnicity, education of the primary economic provider, as well as age. Our findings suggest that first, the way people make sense of good and bad teeth are remarkably concise and consistent. And so for good teeth, respondents were more likely to put white and straight as the primary indicators of good teeth, with 69% and 65% respectively, while bad teeth were looked at as being discolored or crooked, as well as frequently mentioning that somebody with cavities or missing teeth were also indicators of bad teeth. So to answer question 2, what is believed about the causes of bad teeth, we see that as a whole, individualistic explanations over structural for poor oral health outcomes were present, and the most chosen answer, or the most chosen cause, was that most people fail to brush their teeth regularly, an individualistic factor affecting why somebody may have bad teeth. In addition to this, we also looked at how do perceptions of oral health inequality vary by the respondent's social location or political ideology. And with this, we see that race and gender took the same format as the overall sample, with people attributing individualistic factors over structural. But it's interesting to note that there was also the presence of the more conservative you are, the more support for individualism, as well as white respondents rating individualistic survey items as significantly less important than other racial and ethnic groups. For structuralistic explanations, both white and politically conservative rated those slightly or significantly less important. So with these findings, we see that the good versus bad teeth findings are consistent with the Khalid and Quinones study conducted in 2015, which asserted that straight white teeth are idolized within North America. And this is important because while the causes of poor dental health may be complex and multifaceted, the aspects of dental health that are used in social judgment are few and straightforward. In addition to this, similar to the research on the stratification about economic inequality, oral health inequalities skew more individualistic than a structuralist perspective. And this isn't too surprising considering the role of oral health in cosmetic dentistry and its role it plays in social judgment. But it's important to note that a person's socioeconomic status is the main indicator of negative oral health outcomes. So with these findings, we see that by placing individualistic factors with more importance than structuralistic in explaining bad teeth, it's essentially the same as blaming the poor for being poor or for being in the situation of poverty. And from this, we can see that there is a disconnect between what empirical oral health inequality research identifies as barriers to dental care and what the general public perceives as the important barriers to care. Oral health inequality research shows that there is a myriad of factors that affect oral health, both individual and structural, with socioeconomic status being the most important, yet the public perceives individual factors as being the primary indicator of why somebody has bad teeth. And so with this, we can also see that further research on oral health stratification beliefs in general and translational science research is needed to more fully understand and reduce this disconnect in order to promote policies that mitigate these qualities in oral health.